You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves podcast. So, okay, let me just say, as I've been thinking about how to structure this podcast and what to talk about, since I really do want to speak to entrepreneur women, right? Now, let me just also say, caveat here. I believe moms in general are entrepreneurs, okay? As mothers, we have to do many tasks around the home that are entrepreneur related. And we have to wear many, many different hats in order to make things run and work smoothly. So, you may not necessarily be earning a paycheck necessarily to be an entrepreneur, but maybe you are, you know? Um, I think entrepreneurship really comes down to the way that we operate, the goals that we have. What do we want to create? What do we want to do? What do we want to see? And, I think that both, women in business and mothers, and oftentimes those two things, cross over and they coincide with each other. I think in order for this podcast to be a benefit to, female entrepreneurs, we really need to state, like, what do I mean when I say entrepreneur, female entrepreneur, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're earning money. It means I'm talking about the way that you are operating your life, okay? But I also think that there's a big idea out there, and it wouldn't be incorrect either to say that a female entrepreneur is someone who runs a business, right? And because I believe that women need to have their own money, so that way we can get in and we can create with all of our hearts, all of our minds, talents, everything. I think that this is part of the reason why I decided, to go maybe a little further away from betrayal trauma coaching and more into boundary coaching and talking about like how boundaries improve our relationships, improve our money stories, improve all of these things. Because one thing I started noticing with my own coaching clients that weren't necessarily, running a business when I was coaching them through betrayal trauma is we were following these certain principles about like creating boundaries, creating communication, better communication, I should say, um, and creating better relationships in general, protecting themselves, giving themselves safety. And it was amazing for me to watch that every single time when somebody invested with me and then they followed these principles that I teach, they were always like doubling or tripling the investment that they had put in with me for themselves. And so I wanted to start looking into this, and I realized that our relationships are very much tied to our money stories. And when we improve our relationships, our money stories often improve. When we improve, especially the relationship with ourselves and with God, and we decide to follow those relationships over the relationships of what others expect out of us, then we tend to find a lot of peace, a lot of prosperity, and I think a lot of the reason why is because we are living in a way that is actually attuned to godly or universal principles in this case. So, saying that, I definitely wanted to get on this podcast and talk to you guys today about the listening boundary. Now, as you guys know, there's 7 different types of boundaries that myself and my partner Kushla Chadwick have talked about, have researched. Melody is a big proponent of boundaries, and so I've been researching some of her things too. Um, but we basically have seen that there's a listening boundary, which is your number one boundary, and I'll get into that in just a second. There's your talking boundary, which is your number 2 boundary. Those are both your foundational boundaries, and I'll get into the talking boundary in the next podcast. There is your physical boundary, your sexual boundary, your energetic boundary, your time boundary, and your money boundary. So there's 7 different types of boundaries, and when we have really good boundaries in each one of those areas, we tend to live a very abundant, happy, prosperous life and connected with people that really see us, really love us, and really care about us. And it's basically having boundaries is literally the vehicle to what it is you want out of life, as I have seen. Okay. Hence the reason why I've gone more into boundary coaching is because I felt like it really encompassed more of what it is I really wanted to help women create. And that wasn't just fantastic relationships, but it's also fantastic money story as well. Help them create businesses, help them create more clients and those 6 or 7 figure income years. Okay. So let's dive into the listening boundary. Like I said, this is the number 1 boundary. And the reason why is because you have to have a really good listening boundary in order for your other boundaries to work. Meaning, like right now, I'm looking at my time boundary and saying, huh, okay, there's some things there that need some improvement. Because like I'm noticing some things that I do on a consistent basis that create problems. uh like for example, and I'm just going to be totally raw and vulnerable with you guys here because I totally know that you guys are okay with this. But for example, um procrastination is actually one of the things I struggle with personally. Um, and it's just because I'm like, oh, but I just really want to sit here and cuddle my baby, and that's not a bad thing, by the way. Or I just want to watch this movie before I go do this thing that I know I need to do. I just want to do this before this, right? And so I personally don't have a great time boundary. And sometimes that means I'm late to appointments. Sometimes that means that I miss appointments. Sometimes that means I don't get done the things that I said I was going to do, right? And that creates some issues, not only just in time, but in money, in energy, and other areas in my own personal life. And I want to see more success and more prosperity in all areas of my life. And so for me, I need the listening boundary to work with my time boundary because I need to listen for feedback in how my time boundary is working, right? For example, if I'm constantly late or if I'm constantly putting off what I said I was going to do or letting other things come in the way, and now granted, some things do need to take precedence. There are emergencies, right? That do definitely happen. But if I am consistently letting other things that aren't priorities prioritize over the things that really are my priorities, which sometimes definitely does happen, then that is me and I just realizing that that's me listening to the way this boundary is showing up for me. Okay. Uh, I have a fantastic client. As we were looking at some of her boundaries, we recognized that her sexual boundary was one that was very low. She had been sexually abused as a teenager, and by more than one person actually, and because of that, she felt very used, and she kind of got to this, well, what's the point kind of a thing. And it lowered her sexual boundary and caused her other issues in her life with relationships that she really wanted, caused her some physical problems as well. And so we started working on her sexual boundary and helped her learn what it is that she really truly wanted. Now, the other thing about boundaries is they help you understand yourself very, very well. They are basically the moral code in which you decide to operate within. So for me, I love being respectful. I love being honest. I love being charitable. I love being kind and caring. Now, that doesn't mean I'm soft, okay? Um, but I do love being all these things. And so if I have a low time, or if my time boundary, I don't want to say a low or leaky time boundary. Actually, it is a leaky time boundary. I'll say that. Because it's not showing up the way it needs to, right? If my time boundary happens to be leaky, then it's calling into question my honesty, right? And that is not something I like. So one of the things that I need to do is set a better time boundary. Um, and simply say, well, maybe I just need to do what I say I'm going to do, right? And hold myself to that level of accountability. Listening to the way our results are showing up for us, because our results are feedback. They are legitimate, our life's feedbacks. Okay. And some of the results we get out of life, we're like, we love this. This is great. But some of the results aren't so great. Granted, there are other players on our stages, but and this is one thing too, a listening boundary helps us understand we are the key player in our life. We are the constant. Not like it's not my husband, it's not my kids, it's not my dog, it's not my neighbors. I'm the constant in my own life. Therefore, the results I get are from my own decisions. Now, I may get a result such as somebody betrays me, right? Well, I still made the decision to let that person in my life. Maybe I made the decision to ignore red flags. Maybe I made some type of a decision, right? It doesn't mean I need to feel guilty about the decision. It just means I need to listen to the decision. Why did I feel like I needed to let that person into my life? Why did I feel like what were the red flags beforehand? Why did I feel like I needed to keep ignoring certain key points, right? So like these are some of the things that come with a listening boundary. You understand your moral code. You understand how you operate within your moral code. You understand your results are basically a reflection upon your personal decisions, right? And this is what a listening boundary gives us is just the ability to step out of one's self, not feel the need to get emotionally invested in somebody else's story or somebody else's experiences or even somebody else's betrayal of us, right? We don't feel the need to get involved. That's what's amazing about this. Okay. And it just gives us the ability to step outside of that story and just listen. We're looking for keywords key phrases and basically the keys to what this other person believes, okay? When we step back and we slow down the conversation and we're just listening to what the other person is saying, okay? Then what tends to happen is we get to ask ourselves 3 questions. Is this true for me? Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, I can see why that person is thinking that way or feeling that way. I can understand this feedback. I can understand how I personally have done XYZ in order to get this result or have this person believe this way about me. If that's the case, then we get to say, okay, how do I change it? Number one, we take radical accountability for it, right? We own it. This is pillar number 5, ownership, right? We're the owner of our lives. We're the owner of our results. We're the owner of our decisions. We are our master and accountability partner. We are our own, right? That's what ownership is. And so we decide to do something different. If we say that something is not true for us, then we decide to do something different. Second, we might decide that it's not true at all, right? If it's not true for us, we just get to allow somebody else to think what they are going to think without trying to change their opinion. That's not what we're here to do. We're not trying to change their opinion, and that doesn't work anyway. People need to change their own opinions. They need to come to their own truths. That is not our job to make them do it. Okay? And so if we decide it's not true for us, okay, you're welcome to think that. You're welcome to feel that way. I disagree, but that's okay. We don't have to agree. Or we might decide that we don't have enough information. Maybe there's some good points that this other person makes, right? But you're not 100% sure about what they're saying. And so you might decide, well, I need to go research this. Because the thing is we do not act upon other people's truths. That's called manipulation. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want to be manipulated by other people or their thoughts or their opinions. It doesn't feel good. We are not the pawns in somebody else's life. We are the master of our own. And so a listening boundary actually gives us the freedom to not be abused, not be manipulated, not be controlled by the thoughts and opinions of another person. However, without a good listening boundary, we find ourselves at the mercy of other people. We find ourselves at the mercy of their thoughts and their opinions, and we believe that we have to follow it. Now, we actually see this happening in our world today in a major way, and this is actually, in my personal opinion, I think one of the reasons why we have the social problems that we do around the world is, and I think it's because people have low listening and talking boundaries. For example, there's many different opinions out there, many different sides, but it doesn't matter what side people are on. There's always someone in any one of these belief groups that demand and expect. And remember, that's the adversary number one is demanding an expectation, right? Um, but they demand and expect the other person to believe them and to affirm them and to drop their beliefs, their way of life to make them more justified, them more comfortable, and it's absolute and utter manipulation, no matter which side of the spectrum you're on. Okay. Now, personally, I have my own convictions and my own beliefs here, right? When it comes to all of these social issues. But I'm not afraid to hear someone else out because I ask myself these questions. Number one, is this true for me? No, it's really not. So I've just decided it's not true, it's untrue. But maybe I still need some more information too, right? To really hear what someone else is saying. And this also gives me the ability to find those keywords and phrases in another person's argument. So that way, all I have to do is bring up those keywords and phrases again and ask them a question about that. Like, what do you really mean when you say this? Yes, there is a Webster's dictionary out in the world today when it comes to language. But just because one person says one word, it doesn't mean that what they understand that word to be is the same as your own understanding. And this is why we want to slow down. We want with a really good listening boundary, we seek to understand before we ourselves are understood, right? Because if you understand the perspective of another person, this is actually the safest place for you. It doesn't mean like we tend to think that another person must understand us, and that does feel good, right? When somebody else understands us and where we're at, hence also the reason why we have boundaries, right? But that doesn't mean we can expect someone to listen to and understand us. That doesn't work. It never has. But all we can do is control ourselves. And we start that with the listening boundary, making sure that we understand the perspectives and definitions that another person puts upon their life and their experiences, right? And our definitions come through our own filters, our own experiences. And this is why we want to understand where another person is coming from, because once we truly understand them, then we get to the point of, do I trust this person or do I not? Right? When I was coaching betrayal trauma, this is a question I got all the time. Well, how do I know whether or not to trust this person? Well, you have a really good listening boundary. That's how. Because when you seek to understand and you really, really do understand the filters of this other person, and you can even ask some really good questions and help them see, like even they might even see the folly of their own argument. And if they're like, oh, actually I see that. That's I'm gonna change my perspective, my perspective about this, right? Or they might decide to that, well, no, you're wrong. They might not be able to tell you how you're wrong. They might not be able to uh express in any way how you're wrong. They just want you to be wrong. Well, that's a person that you might not want to trust. Because again, that person isn't seeking for knowledge. They're not seeking for truth. They are seeking for someone to manipulate, usually. Now, how does this transfer into a business relationship, right? Well, when you're an entrepreneur and you have a really good listening boundary, it helps you, A, protect yourself from clients that are not honest, honestly. Honestly. Anyway, um, I had a client that had called me, or a potential client, I should say, that had scheduled a call with me a little while ago, and as I was listening to them, I could hear like some of the ways that they had not been honest in their financial dealings. And I wasn't going to say that to them, right? Because it's not my job to call people out on their crap unless you hire me as a coach and you want me to do that. Well, then I will, right? But in a potential client situation, Um, I am not only listening to help this person, but I'm also listening to see if this is a good client, if we would be a good working fit, right? But as I heard them talk about how frustrated they were with other people that they had worked with and how they felt like they had charged too much and they just stopped paying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm probably going to have a similar situation with this client. So I decided right then and there, because again, a good listening boundary helps us not only hear the perspectives of another person, it also helps us make wise decisions. Okay. And I thought to myself, this is not the client for me. This person is a wonderful person, I'm sure, but they need more experience before they come to me. They need to be able to work on some things before they come to me. Now, what if you're in a brick and mortar business? Maybe you have employees, right? Having a really good listening boundary is really going to help you make decisions when employees come to you with disputes about each other. It helps you keep balance in the workplace energy and with the morale. I had a client who actually had a brick and mortar business who had a couple of clients come to her fighting one time. And by the way, if you're a mom, this will also help you as well. Um, and both of them were very adamant that they were right. One was a manager, and the other one was I don't know what like something just kind of below a manager, right? They were like the person that was in charge when the manager wasn't there. So like a junior manager? I don't know. Anyway, but they were disagreeing on the way that they wanted to implement a policy. And so they had taken it to my client and she listened to what each side was saying. Both of them were kind of accusatory to the other. And as she was listening, she realized that it was actually the junior manager that was doing it correctly. That the senior manager had certain ideas, and he also felt a little threatened by the junior manager himself. So, she made the decision to go with the junior manager, and uh, she decided also to have a conversation with the senior manager that was not, accusatory, was not mean, was not judgmental in any way. It was more or less to solidify the relationship she had with this senior manager and help him understand uh, what it was she was actually looking for because the junior manager had understood it better. So she implemented that listening boundary and actually a talking boundary to create harmony again back in her workspace, right? So just a couple of examples there on how oh, and also one more thing too, I should say, like it also helps us when we are going to collaborate with someone else. Um, I tend to listen to how other people who I'm considering doing collaborations with speak about other coaches, other business owners, etc. And if they're judgmental, gossipy, or if I feel like they're not as authentic as what they should, or no, I shouldn't say should, but as authentic as they could be, I might decide to hold back on doing any type of a collaboration with that person, but instead might just decide to work on my relationship because I also feel personally that if I can be a good influence on someone in any way, then it also will help them in their business and, help them become more authentic themselves. right? Because our influences on each other actually do matter too, in a big way. But I've also seen people who are very honest about their weaknesses with me, who are very honest about their experiences with other people, but also realize that even though they had that experience with that person and it's maybe not been the best, that they themselves are the masters of their fate, masters of their destiny, and masters of their life. And so they're going to make different decisions. Those are people that I love collaborating with, right? But I have to implement my listening boundary in order to see and hear those people in my spaces. So that's kind of a wrap up for the listening boundary. Um, Oh, and there is one more thing too that I love about the listening boundary. It allows for differences of opinion, right? Um, I had a mom that contacted me not too long ago, and she was really struggling with her teenage daughter. And as I was listening to the story that she was telling me, I could hear that she wasn't implementing the listening boundary. She wasn't implementing the talking boundary either. She just wanted her daughter to believe what she was saying. And the reason why is, granted, yes, her daughter was doing some things that were probably not the best thing for the daughter. And the daughter was probably also working a little bit in some self-destructive habits, right? But when we employ a really good listening boundary, we're also helping the other person think through their actions and why they're doing the way they're doing something. The best thing we can do, whether we're an entrepreneur or a mom, is help the people that are coming to us, whether it be our children, our spouses, our brothers and sisters, church community, clients. It doesn't matter. There's many different relationships that we have. Our job is not only to understand ourselves better, and that's one thing a listening boundary can do, actually, all the boundaries can do, but also to help them understand themselves better. And so I encourage this mother to do that by asking questions, by instead of getting judgmental and fearful with what the daughter was doing, by simply pulling back and saying, hey, I noticed you're getting a tattoo. Uh, why, like, tell me about it. Explain, like, help me understand it. What does it mean to you? Why do you feel like you needed it? Right? Now, the daughter at first, because she's so used to mom jumping right into fear, got a little bit defensive. And so I also explained, hey, it's okay. I'm not asking to judge. I'm sorry if I'm coming across that way. I truly am not. I'm just curious. I'm curious why you like it. Because I personally don't understand. Because I wouldn't personally do something like that, but I just want to hear why you like it, right? Well, the daughter, as she started talking about why she liked certain things, after a while, after a long while, it took some time, started to realize that she was getting tattoos, engaging in unhealthy sexual behaviors, drinking, getting arrested, like she was doing some really self-destructive things because she just wanted to get the positive attention that she was craving from her mom. And once she realized that she had it, a lot of the behaviors went away and she started making a major reform in her life. When people understand themselves, they act upon their understanding. People don't behave above their self-belief, right? And so a listening boundary is going to help you not only rise to your own self-belief and rise even higher to a I'm a fantastic human self-belief, but also helps those that you love and that you want to work with. Okay? All right, my loves, I hope that this was helpful for you in the listening boundary. If you've got questions for me, please feel free to email the show. There is a place somewhere on like wherever you're listening to this on your platform. There's a place to go ahead and text the show. Click on that. Send me a message. I would love to hear any questions you have. And maybe you might even like me to, and I'll do it anonymously if you'd like me to, but maybe you'd even like me to answer some of the questions on the show personally. And how a listening boundary or any one of the 7 different boundaries can possibly help you. So, all right, my loves, I hope that you've had a wonderful experience listening to this podcast. Go out, implement your own listening boundary. And until next time, keep having those bold hearts, keep making big moves, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.